Welcome everyone to this week's portion called Shoftim. This program is called Torah is for everyone, meaning for Jew and Gentile alike. The Torah was meant for everybody. Shoftim, this parsha is so important to me because it is in this parsha that I read the words that brought me back to God, that brought me to reading the Torah, the Bible, and changed my life forever. So I am excited to read it with you, and I'm hoping that you can see it from a perspective that is really a simple one. We don't have to be theologians. We don't have to be doctors or lawyers or PhDs to be able to read the Torah. Remember, it was given to us at the base of Mount Sinai. And who are us? The slaves, those who left Egypt. They weren't highly educated, but God spoke to them in a way that each one of them could understand. So just listen to the words and try to see how you yourself can apply this to your lives and how you would see it. That's really the importance of the Torah. So let me share the screen, and I'm using the Sefaria. Sometimes I go to other versions because it's very difficult to translate from Hebrew to English, to any other language. So we start in Deuteronomy 16, verse 18, and we're going to be going all the way to chapter 21, verse 9. For this portion called again Shoftim, which means judges. So here it says, Shoftim v'shotrim, you shall appoint magistrates or judges and officials for your tribes in all the settlements that your God, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, is giving you. In other words, He's going to be giving us the land. But He wants them to judge the people with due justice, to be righteous judge, to be judges and officials who follow God, who know that He is watching them. You shall not judge unfairly. You shall show no partiality. You shall not take bribes, for bribes blind the eyes of the wise and upset the cause of the just. So these are very important issues. Should not be bought. Don't allow anyone ever to buy you. Always let your price be too high to put aside your principles. And this is a very famous saying, Tzedek, tzedek, tirdof. Justice, justice, you shall pursue. Always in every area, we need to live in a manner that is just, so that you may thrive and occupy the land that the Lord your God is giving you. You shall not set up, here it says, Asherah, a sacred post. Now, the pagan religions all had their Asherim, or their Asherot, their sacred poles that they would go to and worship. Any kind of pole next to the altar of the Lord your God that you may make, or erect a stone pillar. For such your God, Adonai, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, He detests. And I would invite you to just look up some of the things that you will find under stone pillar or Asherah, sacred posts. Just see the types of tribes that would do that. The Asherah was a pole that was dedicated to the Canaanite goddess Asherah. There were 2 columns erected at temples of Paphos and Heliopolis, which was a type of a stone, a conical stone, the Astarte temple. You'll find all these and see what other types of religions have these stones or pillars that they worship. God does not want us to do that. You shall not bring offerings to the Lord your God of anything, an ox or a sheep that has any defect of a serious kind, for that is abhorrent to your God. It's not so much that He hates those things, but when you bring a gift to God, when you bring an offering, when you go to somebody's house, you want to bring your best. That's what it's saying here. The best of the flock, the first fruit of the flock, had no defect. These were These were the ones that we were to give. Those are the hardest to give up. If there is found among you, in any of the places that you live, that your God is giving you, a man or a woman who has affronted your God and transgressed the covenant. What is the covenant that he's talking about? Right now, the only covenant that we have are the 2 stones that God gave us, the 10 commandments at Mount Sinai. Excuse me. We're not to turn to worship of other gods, to bow down to them, not to the sun or the moon or any of the heavenly hosts. Don't go worshiping all those things that would bring us signs from the heavens. Something I never commanded. And you have been informed or have heard of it. Then you shall make a thorough inquiry. If it's true, and the fact is established, that abominable thing was perpetrated in Israel, you shall take the man or the woman who did that wicked thing out to the public place, and you shall stone that man or woman to death. A person shall be put to death only on the testimony of 2 or more witnesses. No one shall be put to death on the testimony of 1 single witness. That's really important. And these 2 witnesses needed to be righteous, needed to be just. And look what it says next. If 2 people condemned someone to put them to death, look what it says. Let the hand of the witnesses be the first to put the condemned to death. Imagine if you knew they were not guilty and you were the one to take that first stone and to stone that person, how would you feel? And that would be followed by the hands of the rest of the people. Thus you shall sweep evil out from your midst. And look what it says here. So we have the judges and the magistrates. The magistrates, who were the judges, and the officers. But if a case is too difficult, too baffling for you to decide, whether it's a controversy over some homicide, civil law, or assault, matters of dispute in your courts, you shall promptly return to the place that your God will have chosen, and appear before the Levitical priests or the magistrate in charge at the time, and present your problem. When they have announced the verdict to you in the case, you shall carry out the verdict that is announced to you from the place that the Lord chooses, observing scrupulously all their instructions to you. So what do we see here? We see a court with regular people who are God-fearing, wise people, who are known to be righteous and just, who will not take a bribe. If they cannot decide on a matter because it's too difficult, what do they do next? They take it to the Levitical priests, to the temple, to the Mishkan. You could see how here, in the United States, there's a separation of church and state, which began many years before in the late 1700s in France, when they separated church and state, and the matters of state became the rulers. But here it's saying we do not separate the physical and the spiritual. They must go hand in hand, because it was the Kohanim, the priests, the Levites, who would work in the temple, who listened and heard from God. And it was God himself who would give them the wisdom and the knowledge to be able to decide in these cases. That's really important. And we don't have that in any level of government today. You shall act in accordance with the instructions given you and the ruling handed down to you. You must not deviate from the verdict that they announced to you, either to the right or to the left. You needed to do what was said. Should either party involved in the dispute act presumptuously and disregard the priest charged with serving there, your Lord your God, or the magistrate, that party shall die. Thus you shall sweep out evil from Israel. Now it's obvious that today we just don't do that. We don't have righteous judges. We don't have the Levitical system anymore. The religious system is not the same as those who were called by God to serve in the temple, to serve him directly. So we have to look at what do we do today? And it's very difficult because the whole system has to be changed, and only God can do that. So we can't put these people to death in the same way, and where the whole village stoned them. But it doesn't mean that what God is saying doesn't come true, because very often someone will die and we may not know why, but it's because they have behaved in this way. And only God himself would know that. We do not have enough discernment to be able to tell. All the people will hear and fear, meaning reverent, be afraid. They will revere God and will not act with, it says presumptuously. We will not be prideful and haughty. If after you have entered the land that the Lord your God has assigned to you, God is giving us the land. Remember that. We hear that over and over. This promised land has been assigned to the people of God and have taken possession of it and settled in it. If you decide, I will set a king over me, as do all the nations about me, you shall be free to set a king over yourself, one chosen by your God. But be sure to set a king over yourself, one of your own people. You must not set a foreigner over you who is not your kin. Now, this word for foreigner, again, is not ger. The ger is the one who chooses to come and live with the people of Israel, the natural-born citizen. We see that in the case of the two men who entered the promised land after 40 years. Joshua, who was the son of Ephraim, who was the son of Joseph, and Caleb, who was a Kenizzite, the son of Yefuneh. Joseph was a natural-born citizen. He was born of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But Caleb was a ger, like Ruth. Your people shall be my people, your God, my God. There is no separation. And the fact that those two entered the promised land together shows that this nation belongs to all peoples, but not any peoples, those who follow the Torah and the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now, we're free to set a king, even though God did not want us to have a king, because he is our king. But he says, if you want a king, no problem. Later, you're going to read in the book of Samuel, where Samuel says, you want a king? You're going to see what he's going to do. He's going to take your sons and your daughters and make them slave for you. You can look up that verse yourself, but he never wanted to set a man over us. He, the God of Israel, was always to be our covering over us, our protector. But look what it says that our king should not do. He shall not keep many horses or send people back to Egypt to add to his horses. When I read that, I thought of all the people, the Egyptian Jews, who I personally know, who were kicked out of Egypt at the time of when Nasser took over King Farouk, and they lost everything. They had to leave everything there. They left empty-handed, not like this time when they left Egypt. Why would they go back? Perhaps if they had read these verses, they never would have gone back, because the Lord warned them, you must not go back that way again. See how important it is to learn the Torah? They would have known. And he shall not have many wives. And King Solomon had many wives, and some of his wives were pagan wives. And it says they did exactly what it says here that they would do, lest his heart go astray and he goes to other gods, where he builds these pillars and these temples to the other gods. Nor shall he amass silver and gold to excess. What happens when you become so wealthy? The gold takes over. It doesn't allow you to see clearly. And when he is seated on his royal throne, he shall have a copy of this teaching. Which teaching? The Torah, written for him on a scroll by the Levitical priests. And we have that scroll, as I have here behind me, that scroll to this very day, this Torah, the 5 books of Moses. Let it remain with him, and let him read in it all his life, as each and every one of us should do, so that he may learn to revere the Lord his God, to observe faithfully every word of this Torah. But look what it says here, ha-chukim, the chukim. I wonder why he would choose these chukim as well as these laws, the things that God wants us to do. They're not laws. They're the things that God appointed for us to do. It says here, ha-Torah hazot, this Torah, and the chukim, which are laws or ordinances that we may not fully understand why we do them, but we know we have to do them. Excuse me. Thus he will not act haughtily. That in this way, the king won't put himself up on a throne looking down on everyone, haughtily toward his fellow men, or deviate from the Torah. But here it says, min ha-mitzvot, the commandments, neither to the right nor to the left, but stay on the path, the derech, the right path, so that he and his descendants, meaning you and I, may reign, may live long in the midst of Israel. Well, no, the descendants of the king, may they reign long in the midst of Israel. And if Solomon hadn't gone astray, and his sons and their sons after him, we would still be in Israel with righteous kings. But we have not learned yet. The Levitical priests, the whole tribe of Levi, shall have no territorial portion with Israel. So they weren't given a portion of the land. They shall live only off the Lord's offerings by fire as their portion. So when people would bring offerings, this is how they would live. They would bring monetary offerings, food, grain, different types of offerings. And the Levites and the Kohanim would live from that. That's why we learn to be generous, to support those who bring us a spiritual message. But they shall have no portion among their brothers' tribes. The Lord, Yud He Vav He, is their portion as promised. This then shall be the priest's due from the people. Everyone who brings an offering, whether it's an ox or a sheep, must give the shoulder, the cheeks, and the stomach to the priest. I guess that's the best part. You shall also give him the first fruits of your new grain and wine and oil, and the first shearing of your sheep. So for those of us today who don't have oxen or sheep, or we don't have a garden where we plant grain and wine and oil, but we have businesses. We take the first fruits, the 10th, the first tithing, and we give it to God. We give it to the place of worship. And if you're listening on here and you're learning from us, we readily accept your offerings because we have expenses too. For your God, the Lord God, has chosen him and his descendants out of all your tribes to be in attendance for service in the name of the Lord for all times. If a Levite would go from any of the settlements throughout Israel where he has been residing to the place that God has chosen, he may do so whenever he pleases. In other words, the Levite can go whenever he pleases. He may serve in the name of the Lord, Yud-He-Vav-He, like all his fellow Levites who are there in attendance before Yud-He-Vav-He. They shall receive equal share of all the donations, of all the offerings, without regard to personal gifts. Whenever you enter the land that the Lord your God is giving you, you shall not learn. Okay, this is the verse that was shown to me after I came back to Montreal from being 10 years in the New Age. When you enter the land the Lord your God is giving you, you shall not learn to imitate the abominable practices of those nations. Let no one be found among you who gives his son or a daughter to the fire. In other words, who offers. And there were pagans who were doing that, who killed their own children. Today we call it abortion. Who is a soothsayer, a diviner, a sorcerer, who casts spells, who consults ghosts or familiar spirits, or one who inquires of the dead. All these practices, when I was involved in the New Age, going to the seances and the channeling and the rune stones and tarot cards, the Ouija board, all these things, God says, don't touch them, for anyone who does such things is abhorrent, abominable to Yud-He-Vav-He. And it is because of these abominable things that the Lord your God is dispossessing them from before you. When I read that, I just said, how come nobody ever told me? If my parents had read the Torah, if their parents had read the Torah, but after the third generation, hallelujah, I came back to the Torah, and it says, you must be wholehearted. Give your whole heart to the Lord your God. And I pray for that each and every day. And God certainly changed my life. Those nations that you are about to dispossess do indeed resort to soothsayers and augurs, those who foretell the future. You know, when we read the horoscope, what is the future going to be? Any horoscope, stay away from it. To you, however, the Lord your God has not assigned the like. Even prophets who you think are following God, and that's what it's going to start talking about here. From among your own people, meaning the Hebrews, your God, Yud-He-Vav-He, will raise up for you a prophet like myself. That is who you shall heed. Listen to him. And many, many believe that that prophet will be the future Messiah, who we believe in this community is Yeshua. He was a prophet from our own people. He was raised up. He was a prophet during his time. This is just what you asked of your God at Horeb, at Sinai, on the day when we congregated. Let me not hear the voice of my God any longer and see this wonderful fire anymore, lest I die. So Moses is telling us, he's reminding us that we stood at the base of Mount Sinai and that he himself was going to lead this people from whom God would raise a prophet after Moses. Whereupon the Lord said to me, they have done well in speaking thus. I will raise up for them from among their own people a prophet like yourself, who, like Moses. Who was Moses? A man who heard from God, a man who spoke with God face to face. So this prophet would be a man. He would not be a god. They would have tried to turn Moses into a prophet, into a god. And we read that in a book called Moses Redivivus. And Yeshua, they turned him into a god, but he was not a god. He was a man, in whose mouth I will put my words, and who will speak to them all that I command. Yeshua was going to tell him the same words that Moses told us. He was bringing us back to the Torah, bringing us back to the book that Moses gave us, so that we would live a righteous life, so that we would be a light to the nations, or legoyim. And anyone who fails to listen, to hear, to obey the words of that prophet who speaks in my name, I myself will call to account. And Yeshua wasn't bringing a new word, a new covenant. He was bringing us back to this one, which we broke. But any prophet who presumes to speak in my name, any oracle, any prophecy that I did not command to be uttered, or who speaks in the name of other gods, that prophet shall die. God himself will do it. And should you ask yourselves, how can we know that the oracle was not spoken by the Lord, by God? When you hear something, like one of the prophets who I followed was a prophet called Isaiah. Now, if I had read the book of Isaiah, I would have known that the words that was coming out of his mouth, were false. Here it says, if the prophet speaks in the name of Yud-He-Vav-He, and the oracle, the thing that he spoke, does not come true, that oracle was not spoken by the Lord. The prophet has uttered it presumptuously. We are taking the name of the Lord in vain. That's what this means. Do not fear. Do not honor that person. When your God has cut down the nations whose land your God is assigning you again, and you have dispossessed the nations that were living there, dispossessed them and settled in their towns and homes. This is really important. You shall set aside 3 cities in the land that your God is giving you to possess. We were going to form 3 cities. Why? You shall survey the distances, divide 3 parts the territory of the country that your God has given to you, so that anyone who has killed somebody unintentionally may have a place to flee. Anyone who murdered intentionally, the person who, it says in the Torah, you shall not commit premeditated murder in the 10 Commandments, number 6. But here, the person who killed someone by accident would have a place to run to. The other ones, intentional, had to be put to death. There were no prisons. We didn't have to support a place and feed and support these people who deserve to die. It's very difficult today because we don't have 2 to 3 righteous judges or witnesses. Now, this is the case of the killer who may flee there and live. One who has slain another unwittingly, without having been an enemy in the past. It was by accident. For instance, a man goes with another person into a grove to cut wood. As his hand swings the axe to cut down the tree, the axe head flies off the handle and strikes the other, so he dies. Obviously, it's an accident. That man had to run to one of these 3 cities so he could live, because his family would want to take revenge, even though he didn't mean it. Otherwise, when the distance is great, the blood avenger pursuing the killer in hot anger may overtake him and strike him down. Yet he did not incur the death penalty. because he had not been the other person's enemy. This is so important for us to understand. That's why I command you, set aside 3 cities. And when your God, Yud-He-Vav-He, enlarges your territory, as was sworn to your fathers, and gives you all the land that was promised to be given to your fathers, if you faithfully observe all these mitzvot that I command you this day, to love the Lord your God, to walk in God's ways always at all times. And how do we know? We read about it. We learn the rule book, the 10 commandments, the Torah. Then you shall add 3 more towns to those 3. Thus, blood of the innocent will not be shed, bringing blood guilt upon you in the land that your God is allotting to you. God does not want innocent blood to be shed in his land, or anywhere actually. If, however, a man who is the enemy of another lies in wait and sets upon the victim and strikes a fatal blow, and then flees to one of these towns, the elder of his town shall have him brought back from there, and shall hand him over to the blood avenger to be put to death. You must show him no pity. Don't think you're more humane than God. Thus you will purge Israel of the blood of the innocent, and it will go well with you. And then we move to another topic. You shall not move your neighbor's landmarks set up by previous generations. There are markers around a person's property, the property that will be allotted to you in the land the Lord your God is giving you. Don't move them. Don't steal another person's property. A single witness may not validate against an accused party any guilt or blame for any offense that may be committed. A case can be valid only on the testimony of 2 witnesses or more, righteous, just witnesses. And you know who is by those who follow God. If someone appears against another party to testify maliciously and gives incriminating yet false testimony, this is number 10 commandment, the 2 parties to the dispute shall appear before the Lord, before the priests, including the priests, or the magistrates in authority at the time, and the magistrates shall make a thorough investigation. If the one who testified is a false witness, having testified falsely against a fellow Israelite, including the Ger who lived among us, you shall do to the one as the one schemed to do to the other. This reminds me of Haman, just as he built the gallows to hang Mordecai on, he and his sons were hanged on those gallows. Thus you will sweep out evil from your midst, and others will hear and be afraid, and such evil things will not again be done in your midst. Nor must you show pity for pity. Life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. Now, these understandings in Hebrew have nothing to do if I poked your eye, you poke out mine. But you must be punished in a just, righteous measure. That's what this means. Excuse me, l'chaim. When you, as an Israelite warrior, take the field against your enemies and see horses and chariots, forces larger than yours, have no fear of them. For your God, Yud-He-Vav-He, who brought you out from the land of Egypt, is with you. Before you join battle, The Kohen, the priest, shall come forward and address the troops, not the king, not the general, the priest, the Kohen, because we knew he would walk before us with the Ark of the Covenant, blowing the shofars ahead of the army, knowing that God was with us. And he shall say to them, Shema Israel, hear, O Israel, you are about to join battle with your enemy, against your enemy. Do not lose courage. Do not fear. Do not panic or be in dread of them. As a matter of fact, later we'll read that if a soldier is too afraid, he should be sent home. Don't allow people who are fearful to fight, because the others will be influenced by that. For it is your God, the Lord, who marches with you to do battle for you against your enemy, to bring you victory. Then the Shoftim, the officials, shall address the troops as follows. Is there anyone who has built a new house, but is not dedicated? Let him go back home, lest he die in battle, and another dedicated. Look at how merciful this is. When did they build a new house? When they first got married, and they hadn't been even with their wife, and they were sent off to battle. Here they're saying his mind is going to be back home. He's not going to be dedicated to the battle, so he should go home and dedicate his house. Is there anyone who has planted a vineyard but hasn't harvested it? Let him go back home, lest he die in battle, and another harvest it. Is there anyone who paid the bride price for a wife, but has not yet taken her into his household? Let him go back to his home, lest he die in battle, and another take her into his household as his wife. If we followed this when we conscripted people to go into an army, you would have men who wanted to fight, who were wholehearted in fighting against our enemies. The officials shall go on addressing the troops and say, is there anyone afraid and disheartened? Let him go back home, lest the courage of his comrades fail like his. How wise is our Torah. When the officials have finished addressing the troops, army commanders shall assume command of the troops. When you approach a town to attack it, offer it terms of peace. Let them know. If it responds peaceably and lets you in, all the people present there shall serve you in forced labor. If it does not surrender to you, which means that they're willing to be humble and be under your leadership, under their leadership, under the God of Israel. If it does not surrender to you, but would join battle with you, go against you, you shall lay siege to it. And when your God delivers it into your hand, when your God delivers it into your hand, we have to fight, but he wins the battle. You shall put all its males to the sword. That sounds terrible. And we would want to do those things. We would not want to obey. But remember what happened when King Saul was told to go and kill all the Amalekites, but he didn't do it. He kept the king, the best of the women, the best of the cattle, and maybe the best of the men, not sure, to the sword, but it just says the king. You may, however, because he didn't do it, years later, Haman, who was an Amalekite, the son of King Agag, he was, excuse me, he went and tried to annihilate our people. You may, however, take as your booty the women, the children, the livestock, and everything in the town, all its spoil, and enjoy the use of the spoil of your enemy, which your God gives you. Thus you shall deal with all the towns that lie very far from you, towns that do not belong to nations around here. In the towns of the latter people, I mean the ones who are near us, however, which your God is giving you as a heritage, You shall not let a soul remain alive. If we go into the land and the land is giving it to us for us to have, not other lands, but our own land, we shall not allow the souls that live in there. We must get rid of them. The Hittites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, the Jebusites, as God has commanded you, because they might lead you into doing all the abominable things that they have done for their gods. And if you do it, you will stand guilty before your God, Yud He Vav He. When in your war against a city, you have to besiege it a long time in order to capture it. You must not destroy its trees, wielding the axe against them. You may eat of them, but you must not cut them down. Are trees of the field human to withdraw before you into the besieged city? Only the trees that you know do not yield fruit may be cut down. You may cut them for constructing siege works against the city that is waging war on you until it has been reduced. Look how practical God is. He knows we need to eat, and he gave it fruit-bearing trees for us to eat. We don't just cut them down for wood. He made special trees for us to be able to cut down to build siege works. How wonderful our God is. If in the land that your God is assigning you to possess, again, assigning for us to possess, if someone slain, found lying in the open, the identity of the slayer is not known, the elders and the magistrates shall go out and measure the distances from the corpse to the nearby towns. The elder of the towns nearest to the corpse shall then take a heifer, which has never been worked, a young heifer, never had a yoke, and the elders of that town shall bring the heifer down to the ever-flowing wadi, a river, or a valley which is not tilled or sown. There in the wadi they shall break the heifer's neck. The priests, the sons of Levi, shall come forward, for your God has chosen them for divine service and to pronounce blessing in the name of the Lord. And every lawsuit and case of assault is subject to their ruling. Then all the elders of the town nearest to the corpse shall wash their hands over the heifer whose neck was broken in the wadi. And they shall make this declaration: our hands did not shed this blood, nor did our eyes see it done. Absolve, Yud He Vav He, your people Israel, whom you redeemed, and do not let guilt for the blood of the innocent remain upon your people Israel, and they will be absolved of blood guilt. Thus you shall remove from your midst guilt for the blood of the innocent, for you will be doing what is right in the sight of Yud He Vav He. And next week we will read Ki Tetzeh. So I invite you, if you're listening to this and are enjoying us, I invite you to listen to the message for Shabbat on Shoftim, which will bring even more information, more understanding about all that it is saying. So thank you again for listening. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, I would love to hear from you. Please don't hesitate to write to us at info@Shear Yashuv, ShearYashuv.com, shearyashuv.com, and we'll be glad to talk to you, to hear from you. You're invited also to our Shabbat services every Sabbath that start at 12 o'clock. We have people from all over the world who enter into our services online. Thank you for listening, and I wish you many, many blessings in your life. And please turn to the Torah. Turn back to the God of Israel. This is the only way we'll be able to bring in Tikkun Olam. We can do it. So let's begin one by one. I wish you a wonderful week.